Warning, the video you're about to see, although edited for YouTube, contains imagery and subject matter that some may find disturbing. While this video is educational only, I still feel that viewer discretion is advised.
Many of you remember while playing video games to encounter weird and disturbing moments, even if the game isn't a horror game. This video will be dedicated to such games, but also real horror games. I found an iceberg picture on Reddit and I wanted to use it for this video. I will cover the first layer of the iceberg in this video, and of course I will talk about every game we see on the list and show you why they are dark, obscure and disturbing. So just to explain, if you're not familiar with iceberg videos, the top of the iceberg are games that are publicly more or less known. And as we go deeper, we will see much more disturbing obscure games. Just to make it sure, not all games on the list are real horror games, but they contain so deeper meaning and unsettling vibes, and that's why they are on the list. So, make yourself a coffee, sit back, turn off the lights, and let's start with this video.
Layer 1.
Can You Pet is a game about a little chicken, and I know this doesn't seem like a horror game, but don't let the cute graphics fool you. It starts pretty chill, you can play with your chicken, you can dress him up and order it to do various tricks. But as soon as you press the bicycle button, you see that something is wrong, because the bicycle will turn around and it becomes a saw, which rips your cute little body into pieces. Even worse, the parts that are falling out are actual photos of parts and not cartoon-like the game. It is basically a game that wants to play with your emotions, and it also sends a message about animal cruelty. I will combine both Slenderman topics into one and talk about Slenderman in general. Slenderman was a phenomenon when it was created. He haunted everybody's dreams back in the day, and it filled the internet with many creepypastas. It had an original concept and design. You were chased by a faceless man in a forest, trying to collect various letters. The more letters you find, the faster he gets. He is simply the definition of fear of the unknown. Slenderman is also easily one of the most memorable horror characters we saw in recent history. Five Nights at Freddy's. There is not much gameplay in this game because you watch at cameras and that's it more or less. But what made the game a horror game is the part you being haunted by possessed animatronics. You're a security guy, but the only thing you're watching out is for your own sanity. The game exploded in popularity with many sequels and spin-offs, merchandise and of course creepypasta. But what made the game so special is the lore. It's being presented in a cryptic manner which involves dead children. This game frightened many teenagers around the world, and the game also helped to grow many YouTube channels. Spooky Jumpscare Mansion. Can you survive 1000 rooms of cute terror? This game is much different from other games in this genre. Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion is a free-to-play game that can be found on Steam, and it has a cult-like following to it. Many people praise the game for its dark and clever themed horror. As the name suggests, the game has jump scares, and the main objective is you need to find your way throughout 1000 rooms. And with each room you enter, the cuteness fades away. You will find yourself in quite bizarre places and being chased by various monsters. Baldi's Basics. So how to describe this game? Baldi's Basics is a basic game. It's a meme at this point. The game is set in a school where you need to answer questions. So this sounds like real life. But the school got some other problems going on because some questions can't be answered and the game starts just being bizarre. So the game looks like something you would see maybe 10 or 20 years ago as a kid on an educational program. So maybe that makes the game even weirder. Amnesia is a game that wasn't replicated since it was released, and it helped to launch a career of one of the most popular YouTubers out there, 𝙄𝙘𝙧𝙗𝙚𝙗. It's a game where you can't fight back, but only run from the creepy monsters following you around. You need to watch on your own sanity so you don't get insane, and of course you can light up torches to feel safe, but they are very limited. It has a certain charm to it. The whole story revolves around you finding letters where you discover why you awaken with amnesia and what actually happened to you. A masterpiece that is still worth playing. Bendy and the Ink Machine is a game that tells a story in 5 parts about an animator, Henry Stein, who is retired, but he gets called up to visit his old animation studio, where he discovers that the ink machine brings cartoons back to life. To top it all off, they made a special cult where they need human souls to survive. The game possesses a certain charm with the cartoons looking like old Disney characters. I especially like how the enemies are looking at you with their hollow, dark eyes. Not the most disturbing game on the list, but we will go more deeper on the iceberg. Don't worry. Resident Evil is a well-known franchise with many games and spin-offs, and it would be a miracle if you didn't heard it about somewhere. Well, Resident Evil 4 was certainly a good horror game, and it has its moments. Because the game is so well known, I won't dive deep into this one. The game was a breath of fresh air and it changed the perspective of the previous titles, and it was much more immersive for the time. Enemies have also become more deadly and better looking. I leave it at that, but we will soon take a look at another Resident Evil on the list. Don't worry. SCP Containment Breach. So this game goes into weird territory. The game is based, as the title say, on a SCP foundation, so it's like a prison for people who have special powers or they are a threat to the human society. The game opens with you walking a prison and being escorted. So basically the military was sent into the prison, kill everybody in it, including you, but they got also possessed over time. It's based that the SCP are different types of, let's say, viruses that can affect your behavior and you can act like a zombie, or when you hear a certain music, you're driving notes with your blood, and so on. The game definitely has a Illuminati vibe to it. I hate to admit it, but it generally scares me. It's not like I'm believing there is a facility like that with paranormal activities, but the thought of what are the governments doing without the public knowledge is quite unsettling. The game has pretty mixed reviews, where some claim it's a masterpiece on its own, others say it's a pile of horse crap. But I'll let you decide. Among the Sleep lets you take a control of a toddler, which parents are divorced. The game can be fairly creative in its environment and atmosphere. You will visit many strange places. The most horror aspect of this game is the fact you're a hopeless toddler in a grown-up world. But you are not alone, because you have your teddy bear. Well, the teddy bear is really creepy. With his dark and empty eyes, it is like you're looking into abyss. The game is definitely extremely short and kind of repetitive, but it's worth checking out. Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares is a game where you take control of a character called Six. Your job is to get out the freakish facility you got caught in. You will need to sneak out, or even worse, outrun your enemies in hope you don't get caught. The game doesn't revolve around cheap jump scares, but rather setting the right atmosphere. You're a small and scared kid in a yellow raincoat. And yeah, you need to avoid everyone because it will mean your death. It's a game who presents how a kid views all the horrors of an adult world.
Layer 2.
𝙬𝙗𝙦𝙗 is a top-down survival game released in 2014 and it managed to fly under many radars. It is set in 1987. You have to play as few characters lost in the wood and you need to find your way out. I know this doesn't seem particularly interesting, but bear with me. 𝙬𝙗𝙦𝙗 is a really bizarre game with a folk vibe to it. To not spoil the story, it has a few possible endings, but it messes with the subject of dreams and reality. So it gets pretty interesting as you progress throughout the story. What definitely shines is the atmosphere and how they use the music in the game, because every so often you won't have any music, but just sound effects. Cry of Fear is a game with mixed ratings. It has a vibe like somebody mixed Fear and Silent Hill 4, so we got this. It has some questionable design choices and technical issues, but it's easily seen that the developers put much love into it. It is a FPS game built on the Source engine, so it's a Half-Life mod, so to say. It is not something that was built of sheer boredom and put on Steam. This is definitely on my to-play list. It has some jump scares, but they didn't overdo it. But what they did nail is the settings, with the dark, long corridors, scary monsters creeping from every corner, and the sound effects are freaking amazing. The game keeps you really on the edge, but the Source engine brings its limitations. And of course, crowd jumping is included. A knife is also the weapon of choice in the beginning, so it can be a bit tedious. Still, Cry of Fear is worth checking out. Karamari Hospital and the Dollhouse are DLCs for the spooky jump scare mansion we saw on the previous iceberg. So I know, why didn't I include those two DLCs in the last video? Hear me out, the first game seemed a bit goofy and fun. It is a game I can't take seriously, but those two DLCs crank it up to 11. They introduce new mechanics, more weapons, more rooms, scary monsters, and you discover far more scary monsters. And to be honest, every horror game set in a hospital is a must play in my opinion. And of course the Dollhouse will freak many people out, because you will carry a doll throughout the game and she's possessed. If you enjoyed the previous part, you will probably enjoy the DLC even more. Why is Dead Space so highly regarded in the horror game fanbase? Aside from being an innovative piece of work, Dead Space is quite simply just terrifying on its own right. Few games can have a strong and horrifying opening as Dead Space, and even fewer games can build on that momentum throughout the whole game. When Dead Space grabs hold of you, it doesn't let go. With the lack of proper ammunition and armor, the atmosphere of Dead Space is tense, since you will always have to expect the unexpected. Unless we are talking about the newer sequels where the game is more combat and action based. But sci-fi horror is always good. Now Resi 7 is a Resident Evil that really caught my attention. It grabbed me so hard I couldn't let go of the game. I'm a huge fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, and I had that vibe going throughout the whole game. The first time you walk into the house and saw the cockroaches and the decaying food, it grossed me out. But I also love how they use the color palettes in the game. And plus, Jack creeping around the corner and hunting you down like Leatherface with a chainsaw was real nightmare fuels. I made a video about why switching to the first person view was a good choice for Resident Evil, so go check it out. And yeah, more about Resi 7, go and play it. Why are you waiting? By the way, I used a VR set and it's something that I could recommend to everybody to try out. BioShock is a series that captured my attention so hard that I beat the first 2 games in just 2 weeks. But first, would you kindly smash that like button and subscribe if you didn't? You see what I did there? To not spoil the ending to someone watching, the BioShock series is something special, set in a dark and forsaken city of Rapture, at least the first parts of the story. It revolves around how people grew up and wanted to build a perfect society with gene manipulation. What made BioShock so beautiful is also use of the Art Deco, also called Style Moderne, a movement in decorative arts and architectures that originated in the 1920s. I need to stop here because I can make an hour-long rant about why you should definitely play or replay this game, and the story is too complex sadly to boil it down in a few sentences. Alien Isolation is a first-person stealth horror in which you, a human full of blood and guts, has a will to survive and must hide an 8-foot-tall alien creature who wishes to poke a hole in you, such that all of your blood and guts will be spit on the floor. Remember that weapons are useless and the alien will hunt you down if you make too much noise. It is that segment that makes the game shine its own way. Of course, there are many games that make you helpless, but again, Alien is a cult classic enemy, and who doesn't want to be chased by him? Soma is a game that I sadly never heard of it, and I'm regretting it. The story is about how artificial intelligence is developing so fast that it's turned on the human race. It is a game that sends shivers down my spine. Because it is so close to home, it makes it even creepier. We all know how the technology is advancing with the VR headsets, Metaverse, and Elon Musk developing a chip that can be implemented into a human brain. I know that they are testing it only on chimpanzees now, but how long will it take to try it on humans? But as far as we know, they could already doing the experiments in secret. Soma is set in 2015, where our character is dying, but he copied his conscience and was placed in a robot. To not spoil too much of the game, it is a trip worth experiencing. The game is played in the first person, and it's a game where you play hide and seek with the monsters and solve puzzles. Outlast is a well-known horror franchise. The plot follows an anonymous tip about the inhuman experiments at the asylum, and there said a reporter Miles to investigate. As a typical game of this genre, you can fight the enemies that you encounter. Your only tool is your camcorder. Outlast blind corners and pitch black sewers possesses an illusion of the danger greater than it actually is. But really, illusion of danger are all games are capable of conjuring, and Outlast conjures them relentlessly. Their other games don't step out much of the concept, so the newer games can be a little repetitive. Fatal Frame has something that main horror games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill doesn't have, and that's a Japanese setting. It had also a fixed camera angle like those 2 horror game giants, but you're armed with a camera and you need to explore forsaken temples and look for ghosts. The game is very dark and the colors that thrive are black and grey for the most part. The scariest part about Fatal Frame games is that you don't need to hide or run away from the ghosts, but rather Fatal Frame wants you to face your fears and actually look and photograph the ghost to save yourself. What is a great concept if you ask me. Dark Souls is a bit odd choice to be on the list. Looking at the game, we can easily see why is it on the list. With a deep and some bizarre lore, and the game has also some disturbing enemies. But to be honest, this game would be a better pick for the first layer, because it doesn't deserve a place with Silent Hill and Resident Evil 7 on the same place. But changed my mind. The most horror aspect of this game is when you look at your time you spend dying. Dead by Daylight is a horror game that wanted to be almost a esport and not a proper horror game. I mean, it deserves a place on the list because it includes many cult killers we saw throughout the cinema history, and it has a great atmosphere where you're being chased by the killer, but in my eyes it isn't a proper horror game. I always think that a horror game needs to be a single player experience, and that's my problem with Daylight. Let's move on. Until Dawn is a game that will play with your emotions. With a great cast and great animation, it really hooks the player. The story looks like a cheesy 80s horror movie where a bunch of people is caught in the cabin and the shit hits the fan, but the difference is that you're playing and making decisions, so rethink every choice you make. What I need to mention is how they use the camera so it seems like you're always being watched. The game is really cheap nowadays and commonly known, so let's get to the next weird pick on the list. Legend of Zelda is a franchise that I got really in just a few weeks ago, and you can thank Breath of the Wild why I wasn't active on my channel recently, but also to some work related stuff. The game that definitely stood out in the franchise with its odd missions and characters is Majora's Mask. I wanna mention few things why Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is on the list. First, the moon. Holy heck, who thought this would be appropriate for kids? Big round red eyes looking at you every step you take? Definitely not good. The people who got turned into spiders with their faces and limbs still visible on the spiders are also nightmare fuels for little kids. There is a whole rabbit hole to go down on this game, but that will be a theme for another video. The Silent Hill franchise has a cult following. Pun intended. The first Silent Hill game shook up the game industry when it was released on the PlayStation 1. Where many games were horror-based and relied on jump scares, the Silent Hill games were more for a mental torture of the player. The atmosphere of the story got polished with every entry and it got just more intense. It's a game series that I always wanted to jump in to witness its full glory. Sadly, Silent Hill is a dead franchise at this point, but the game is still in high regards. I played the room for this channel and it knocked me out of my chair, especially how you're locked in an apartment. It really accommodates with the pandemic thing we going on, so it was a winning combo for me. One more thing to mention, to see how Silent Hill is messed up, they use dentist tools into the sound effects. I mean, that's the pinnacle of horror right there, am I right? Anatomy is a horror game set in a haunted house. It is a weird game to say the least. Why is that, you ask me? Because it is a game where you don't fight monsters, ghouls or ghosts, rather you fight with the feeling throughout the whole game that something is wrong and you're not quite sure what. As you're walking around the house, you will find tapes with ominous messages about the house. As you collect those tapes, you see with every step something is happening. You will see glitches, the tape will be corrupted, and so on. It is definitely a game worth checking out. Dark Deception. So everybody knows Pac-Man, at least I hope so. It is that game where you have been trapped in a maze and munch pills and run away from ghosts. Holy heck, that was a terrible description. Well, back to Dark Deception. It is like Pac-Man, but in first person, and instead of being chased by ghosts, the indie developer put a special flavor to it and you're running away from giant monkeys dressed in a hotel stuff. And if you think that sounds funny, look at this. The game is divided into chapters and it's a fun, interesting concept game, so to say, but I can't take it seriously. If you look at a game like Cry of the Fear, what I mentioned in the beginning, it is simply seeing how the whole game was more thought out and better executed. But I guess it's worth to try it out for an hour. Bloodborne is again a game like Dark Souls, which definitely has some scary vibe to it with monsters and some lore elements. I don't think this game deserves to be on the second layer, maybe on the first. It's not a bad game, but I think it should be, with Dark Souls, one layer above. Once again, you can state your opinion down below. You're not scared of the water, but you're scared what is in the water. That quote can describe this game. Even if the game is really beautiful, exploring and surviving is quite fun, of course, at daytime. But at darkness and you are in an alien world, you don't know what hides in the depths of the oceans. It is the sense of loneliness, unknown, that makes Subnautica so special. You know that feeling when your hand is hanging out of the bed and you have a feeling that something will grab it? Imagine being stuck in an ocean at dark time, and add VR to the mix and you're ready to go. Good luck. The Fear games has a special place in my heart. Fear is a game that definitely was. The combat is really amazing in the game, responsive, impactful and fun. The vibe of the game was perfect. You're in an assault recon that specializes in paranormal activities. It involves you, the scared player, being chased by an unknown little girl. Last year I did a full review of this game, so if you want to hear some more, check the video out to see more about this piece of art. Now this is a very weak pick for this end of the second layer of the Disturbing Iceberg video, because I can't find any element on why this game should be on this list. I don't consider the game to be obscure, disturbing, dark, at least not worth mentioning. It is a pretty mediocre game as far as I heard and read about it.
Layer 3.
So you remember 30 seconds ago when I said bizarre and disturbing stuff? Please bear with me on this, guys, okay? 𝙄𝙘𝙚𝙗𝙚𝙗 Literature Club. You don't know about this game? Oh boy. So, this is a visual dating horror novel for $0 on Steam. But 𝙄𝙘𝙚𝙗 is a bizarre game because you really don't know what the horror is about. It is a game that is marketed as a horror game, so you know what you're in for. But when the horror aspect isn't showing, you're trying to analyze every aspect of the game to find it. This game is a rabbit hole on itself. So to spoil some stuff, after playing 2 hours of a slow-pacing visual novel style of gaming, that one of the characters is suffering depression, is doing self-mutilation and commits suicide. And then the game boots you up at the beginning of the game, but without her, and the game is starting to glitch out. Then you see the club president Monica starts to be aware of itself, so it breaks the fourth wall with you, deletes every girl from the game, so you can be left alone with her forever. It goes so far that she's actually messing with your files on your PC and sending you messages to help her. A truly bizarre and disturbing game. How to describe an undescribable game? Let's try from the beginning. Friend Bo is the name of our character. It's a psychological point-and-click horror game. Now the story follows the story of a young girl which one night finds her parents sliced up into pieces by a cult. After witnessing such a scenario, the girl ends up in a mental institution. She wants only to get out, to get back to her beloved granny and finally seek the peace she needs to recover from the things she saw. To her unpleasant surprise, the doctor disagrees with her and thinks she's suffering from depression and schizophrenia and gives her pills. After taking the pills, we see how the world just turned into a mess. The game doesn't give us many clues about is the young friend suffering from illness or are all the pills she's taking are the problem to her hallucinations. The only way to find out is to talk with your demons. But be aware of the demons, because they are the whole time trying to manipulate you to end it all. Imagine being a kid in a loving family. Every day is filled with happiness and joy. Then you suddenly discover your parents are getting divorced and you are left with your mother. As the time goes by, you see that something is off about your mother and the way she's acting. One day, after watching the religious channel, a voice spoke to her and said to her she needs to purify you. First, taking everything you possess, including your clothes. But then the voice starts to speak again to her and tells her the only way to release you of your evil bindings is to kill you. As your mother is trying to chase you with a knife, you crawl into your small chest, and the story goes into many theories what happened. Some say that the game you're playing, a top-down shooter, is based on his last thoughts as he draws breath. This is a really terrifying story, which is to some degree true because the indie developer suffered abuse as a child, but channeled his sufferings and thoughts to this story and game, and he made it remarkable. It is a game that addresses religious elements and many others, but there is also too much to talk about this game, so I stop it here, and I hope you understand why it deserves to be on this list. War, devastation and killing. Every human being has the capacity to be evil, but who determines what is evil? We can probably agree when I say killing is bad and an evil deed. Is the killing then justified? After all, you're doing it because you're giving orders. But what if the people that you're commanding have another plot on their mind, a more ambitious, a more selfish plan without you knowing it, and you're just a puppet of the puppet master? Then the war you're fighting is no more on the battlefield, but rather in your head, and that's the theme what makes Spec Ops stand out in the FPS community. Maybe the gameplay isn't something special. It wasn't at the time that the game was released. The graphics have also that PlayStation 3 blur, but the story is carrying the game to its glory it has. You start your day like every other as a software engineer. Then things got weird as you start to work in an asylum. You witness horrible torture to some people in the facility. And that's not right, every human being deserves dignity. As you wanted to file a report, you get caught. But then one of the inmates breaks out and starts to do mayhem. In fear, you only manage to grab your camcorder and you fight for your survival starts. As you're not familiar with any combat, the only way you can survive is to hide and outrun your enemies. Outlast Whistleblower was initially a DLC, but it was later released as a standalone game. It acts as a prequel to the first game, and I think the Outlast game is a real treat for every horror fan. I will start with Inside and then later mention why is Limbo also included. Inside tells a story without words. It would be better to say the story is crafted with the visuals and what our minds is capable of imagining of what you saw and feel throughout the game. The game has a depressive tone. Like Soma in the previous video, it addresses the theme of brain control. We see people walking like zombies brainlessly into a facility. But why? What happens in the facility? Who is the owner of the facility? Why is the whole world abandoned and deserted? Those are the questions you can only answer, as the game isn't telling much. Now, Limbo and Inside have few things in common, and that's why people think they are connected. One of the most important things is the mind-controlling worms. Now in Inside, we saw the worms are controlling pigs. But in Limbo, if we play the game, we see that Limbo is controlled by the worms. Many speculate that Limbo is dead. There are many crazy theories about this, but I will stop here and let you dive into the mysterious world of those games. Imagine you being trapped in a prison cell. The world is infected by a virus created by Dr. Money so he can make more money. You receive letters from Dr. Money, Mr. Smiley, Charlotte and Salvador. The whole world to you are the four walls you see. To analyze this game a bit, I give you some minor spoilers. Happy Body is assigned to you by Dr. Money to keep you happy and not suicidal, since you're one of the only healthy people left in the world. And the nice girl who runs the local bakery near the building you are imprisoned is suffering from loneliness and fear of what Dr. Money has done to the world. I know that the graphics are Windows 98 style or worse, but the game gives me slightly the chills because sadly the creator of this little game is no more among us 𝙄𝙘𝙚𝙗𝙚𝙗, which gives the game another perspective. Is maybe this how he felt during the last days as a person who is physically apparently healthy but his mind is trapped into darkness? This game is more about the feelings you feel throughout the game than the gameplay aspect. The Last of Us brings us a heartbreaking story about a cold-blooded world after a fungus virus attacked humanity. If you're wondering if the virus scenario could be real, check this video in the upper corner. The game shows us how the human race turns on each other for food, supplies and weapons. Or what are you capable of doing to save a loved one? Every shot counts and every decision could be your last. Watch your step, because the infected won't have any mercy. 𝙄𝙘𝙚𝙗𝙚𝙗𝙗 is a prequel game to Presentable Liberty, and you play as Dr. Money. So, if the previous game sounded interesting, you should definitely give this game a go, as it lets you a deeper look into the game. In Modern War, you will die like a dog for no good reason. We explore in this video how war can be bad if you're in it, but how does the war play out when you are not on the front, but just a normal civilian? You will need to watch out for your group and yourself. As you're sitting in your small shelter, memories of warm home fade away with every sniper shot. Many things will be on your mind. In the time of war, should you give the kid food which is knocking on your door, even if you don't have enough for your group? Have mercy and starve. Or don't have mercy and see how your group becomes depressed and suicidal because of such a deed. This game is definitely not for the light-hearted. So, to cheer you up a bit after some depressing themes, here is Pony Island. This game lets you play as a pony, but also as a programmer. But don't worry, you won't be really programming. It is of course a simplified version for the sake of the game. Now this game has some flaws, but many of the games on this list have. But does it have where it counts? In the story element, immersion and atmosphere. Well, sort of, because it's a quite bizarre game which loves to play with the fourth wall, and it has some jump scares now and then. But it has its shares of disturbing moments because it involves Satan. I mean, I didn't say it was much better than the previous games on the list, but it has a cute pony at least. This game possesses definitely sinister and evil charm to it, and it feels rewarding after you discover its true means. Skipping this one, guys, because I already talked twice about Atlas on this list. Don't be mad. Fingerbones sets you in a quite an interesting and small atmospheric world. The game is looking much like a Minecraft mod. The game is structured around who is insane. As more and more titles on this list dive into this subject. The story follows a man who is finding messages. You can finish the game when you want it, because at all times an exit is available, which seems like an interesting concept. The game is pretty certain you would not exit through the door, because it will be end of the game. But to be real, if you downloaded the game, you want to play it probably, so yeah. Back to Fingerbones. I don't know if this game will be worth your time. It has a plot twist at the end, but I don't know, if the game looks interesting to you, give it a go. Let's move on, okay? What hides the deep web? Many of us only experience the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the internet. But where the internet really starts to show its real face is on the deep web. Everything is possible over there with the proper knowledge. One of the things that could be found on the dark web, besides many illegal substances and stuff you shouldn't possess or use, are things that are called red rooms. Now if you're not familiar with red rooms, well, that's a good thing. But let me explain what they are. Well, red rooms are sites on the dark web where people live streaming torture and killing of people, so that other sick and twisted minds can pay an amount and demand undesirable things to be done. This game is based on that idea. Both games are based on solving puzzles, hacking systems and browsing the deep web. But it isn't that easy as you think. You will be invaded by the SWAT team, but also a killer who is trying to get a hold of you after you failed to hack a system. You will also need to run away from your PC, change your VPN and many other things. But the biggest problem of the game, what many people are complaining, is that the game hasn't any checkpoint. So if you get caught or killed, it's game over for you and you will need to start the whole process all over again. Silent Hill is one of the best horror games that the horror genre has to offer. Silent Hill 2 sends you on a journey to find your wife. But then the questions are starting appearing. Where is your wife? Why did she left? Silent Hill then introduces us to a few characters throughout the game. Every character has some odd choice. Why are they in the town? Does Silent Hill act like a purgatory to those people to seek forgiveness? Or does it act as a town where you need to face your inner demon? Or it is just an illusion? The game will keep you on the edge with the story. I won't dive much into the depth of the game because spoiling this masterpiece would be a shame. Everyone who played the game knows what I'm talking about, and for you who didn't play the game, go on and dive into the folk town of Silent Hill. Omori lets you fight with your fears and the dark side that is following you around. The easy way is to run away and forget about everything, going with your friends on a grand adventure, but every so often you're confronted with the dark side. But the game isn't only set in the dream world, but also in the real world. So the only way Omori can wake up from the dream world is by stabbing himself with a knife. The time you're playing in the real world is great, as they show you what are your dreams made of. You saw one of your so-called friends in the real world and she is hanging out with some bad guys, and you get into a fight with her and you attack with the knife you use on yourself in the dream world. Now this got a really dark twist to it, because you're not anymore in the fantasy world. That raises so many questions, but it is a genre worth experiencing. It is a grindy game. It will take you about 20 hours to beat this game. If you're a fan of SNES RPG games, this game is worth a try. What is more depressing than ending your life? Probably not succeeding and be brought back to life. This is the grim start of The Cat Lady, made by a Polish developer. Along with your depressing state, you met a lady who is broken like you. The game is stepping into some hot water. What AAA games don't even come close? And this game has it all. It is a real depressing tale of a woman who is losing touch with reality. It is a story worth exploring if you're into the abstract art style the game has, and you wanna hear about some heavy subjects being put in the front light. Higurashi When They Cry is a type of a game that isn't for everyone. It is a visual style psychological horror with sprinkles of drama and mystery. Oh boy. Much of the game revolves around you growing to like the characters in the game, so when the final twist is revealed, it is even more impactful. This game is divided into two parts, so the real action, so to say, is in the second part. Do not hesitate anymore, let's start with the layer 4. In a weird flash, all the women disappeared from the world. This weird action leads that the men who are left in the world turn to barbarism and aggressive behavior, and they found a drug that can turn them into a weird abomination if they overuse it. Your character finds in the middle of nowhere a little girl. Because of the horror that is happening in the world, he decides to protect the girl no matter what, despite struggling from a drug addiction. After somehow she got kidnapped, you do everything you can to save her. It's a weird and bizarre game that looks like a 2D Earthbound game, but the game presents many dilemmas to the player. For example, where he needs to choose to permanently decrease his status or sacrifice one of his party members, which can lead that the other members leave the party. Don't let the somehow cute graphics fool you, because this game is pretty bizarre and disturbing with its odd dialogue. A good horror game needs fleshed out characters. Saya no Uta is a visual horror novel that takes you on a wild trip. After a car crash, our character ends up in coma. After waking up, the character is only seeing the world from a grotesque perspective. Everything is covered in flesh, skin, organs, and the constant smell of rotting flesh is not leaving him alone. The game can be considered as body horror because of the imagery shown, but this game goes more in a psychological and existential questions. What I mean by that is that our character is tortured by demons every day, and he questions every relationship he had. Many moral dilemmas start to appear about what is wrong and what is right. The game has a preset railway to follow with not many options. You are here to sit and enjoy the horror that is unfolding to you. The game switches like Silent Hill between the world depending on the situation. Maybe this game isn't the best horror game you ever played, but it's worth your while if you're in such a things. PT was a game that nobody expected, and it shook up the game industry like no other game. After so many years of Silent Hill being a dead and forsaken franchise, we finally got a new entry, a new demo. So that Konami with Hideo Kojima, the maker of Metal Gear Solid, deliver us a game that would be remembered for the eternity probably. For an unknown reason, this masterpiece got cancelled and we were left with our imagination of what could the game be. This game has a special vibe and atmosphere which only Silent Hill can bring to the table, and it's a really sad story that the game was cancelled. After waking up, you can explore your little apartment and you will do few tasks, such as feeding your beloved shrimps, finding your keys and wanting to chat with your friends, but ending up to talking with a bot. After that you need to clean your microwave and eat, but to your unpleasant surprise your fridge is empty and you proceed to eat one of your beloved shrimps, before going to see what is hidden in the hidden room behind your bookshelf. And for our unpleasant surprise, there is a naked man in a cage. After we decide to go to bed, you see a note that you left to your mother about how your dad is gone and you wanna end it all to suffer no more. This game is fundamentally as simple in the gameplay elements. Now analyzing the game, we can debate that this whole thing what we see is unfolding in our character's head, because he's suffering from deep depression. The only friends he had, he proceeds to eat, which can be explained as he's breaking up his existing relationship with people. And when he tries to reach to other people, he's talking to a bot. And our door to apartment is locked, so we can only look outside. This could be explanation of this game, or I am overthinking things. Go play the game and state your comment. Set in the 1950s, in Japan, the game revolves around the grotesque murder of young high school girls, and thus the player is bound by 1950s technology. So there is no DNA testing, but also no cell phones. The detective who wants to find about those murders discovered that his wife was also murdered by the serial killer. The game theme is about rebirth and moving on from the past tragedies, and cleansing yourself from the sins from the past. The game is a true mystery novel. Sadly, the mystery is bigger than the twist at the end. But this game has a nice system where you can manage all your decisions, and it's a pretty long game also. And of course, the game has its share of graphic horror, especially how they presented the dead high school girls. So the game starts with 4 students. They all gonna retreat together, then one of the characters starts to talk about a ghost witch in the forest, and then they start disappearing one by one. The gameplay is simple. You make shapes touch together with matching colors to rank up more points, while 2 of the same color shape are in the air, make them touch each other. A weird concept, but okay. There are 3 endings to the game. You will unlock a certain ending depending on how many points you get, and the game loves to mess with your computer a bit, because you will receive some photos which the game will change throughout your playthrough. But after my research, I'm not quite sure if this game will be worth your time. Corpse Party is a cult classic game at this point and definitely deserves a spot on this list, but I think this game has a pretty big following. If you're not familiar with the game, let me clear you up a bit, okay? So a group of friends gather in a school to say goodbye because one of their friends is transforming into another school. But then they got sucked into another dimension, basically hell. Gradually, they either starve, go mad and kill themselves or kill each other. There are also a good chance that you run into many torture spirits who roam the crumbled halls of this school. Don't let the 16-bit graphics fool you. This game is a graphic horror at its finest. The 16-bit gameplay is followed by pictures and static images of character for more immersive experiments. There are also many versions of this game, with each having alterations. Dreaming Mary follows Mary, who wanders around in her dreams, obviously. This game is a pretty short game made in the RPG Maker. You will need to do some tasks for some characters you meet along your way. To experience the game in its full glory, you will need to beat it a few times, and really watch out for the small things and hints. It's like you need to dream again to see the true things happening. You will dig deep to find disturbing things and replay the game a few times, but the game is relatively short, so that's a good thing. And man, the game will give you the chills and keep you on the edge. The game isn't about jumpscare, but it's about setting the right atmosphere, and it really succeeds to that. So, you guys remember 𝙄𝙘𝙚𝙗𝙚𝙧𝙜 Literature Club from the previous video? Well, this game is from the same guy, so you know how good this game is. It's again a visual novel, with smooth water palette graphics. The visual direction is great, but we are here because of the dark aspect, aren't we? It's about a trio, Shinichi, Miyuki and Aoi. Aoi is definitely the weirdest of the bunch, because she can talk to God apparently, and you want to get to know her more, trust me. It's a deep and interesting story about a love relationship with ultimatum at the end, so fans of horror visual novels will find much enjoyment in this game. Manhunt is probably one of the most controversial games on the PlayStation 2, but also probably on the Nintendo Wii also. I will talk about in general about Manhunt in this video. So if you are into horror and violent games, there isn't any chance you didn't hear about this game. The game is a stealth-based game with a lot, and I mean a lot, of brutal executions played out in cutscenes. What adds the cherry on the top is definitely how the game, for whatever reason, was put also on the Nintendo Wii, where you need, with the motion control, performing brutal executions, imitating how you are strangling somebody or stabbing. We all know that Rockstar doesn't shy away from controversy, but this game is still probably the most brutal release they had. Manhunt is blacklisted in many countries and is forced to be censored to be re-released at all. The plot of the first game follows a serial killer who got released by a guy who calls himself the director, and he wants you to do obscure and brutal murders so he can make snuff films. The way the game lets you kill people is just wild. Unfortunately for you guys who are maybe interested in playing this game, the copies of this game are really hard to come by. So, on to the next game. Swansong is a story of broken people living in a broken world. This post-apocalyptic graphic horror is yet again another visual novel, but this will turn your stomach. Swansong does some interesting things with the lore, as it lets you to play with 5 different characters. This game has a great visual art style. The story starts maybe a bit slow, but when it starts, oh boy. When the village is hit by an earthquake, the people who are left, they need to survive the harsh nature in wintertime. But after a bit, we will see how humans turn on each other in life and death situations. Because I don't want to risk any YouTube strikes, this game includes, yeah, those things you see on the list. But the game doesn't glorify any of these things. The game is kind of weird. It has many bizarre scenes. For example, the scene when one of the girls, for whatever reason, is dancing naked in the snow, and to top it all off, she's kind of bloody because... yeah, I don't wanna give any more details, okay? I know those things can be a turn off to many people, but Hey, you saw the theme of the video. What did you expect? We will talk about ponies and rainbows? Well, yeah, we did talk about ponies in the last video. The game is also pretty long, around 50 hours. The developers wanted also to try to portray their view on many things about how they see the world, so it can drag a bit too long on some things. If you for whatever reason want to play this game, I warn you once again about the content. Whoa, we can't really get away from the visual novels, can't we? The game revolves around Mercy, a teenage girl living in a miserable life in an isolated village led by a strange religious cult. Mercy involves various hallucinations and delusions, led her to be embraced by the community as a mystic power. However, when the certain chains of events turned her visions dark and disturbing, she was proclaimed as a cursed barrier, and she started being perceived as danger. Soundless, most immediate themes are those of mental illness and social exclusion. We observe the whole story throughout the lens of Mercy's mind, which wraps the reality around her in a disturbing fashion. The game has a distinct art style that really looks nice, especially with the washed out background images. My name is not important. What important is what I'm going to do, and I fucking hate this whole world. Remember the scene from Modern Warfare in the airport, in which you can kill innocent people? Well, this game is that scene on meth. This game is an isometric first and third person shooter. The edge protagonist is a psychopath who goes on a rampage. Why? Well, the game doesn't tell you. What is important? You need to kill everybody you see. The game has a special art style with its black and white color palette, but they added some flavor because some things like flames, blood, police lights are in color, which brings a certain depressive and gritty view to the game. The game is definitely Postal inspired, but it can be also described as a murder simulator. Some of the games on the list until now include deep story and character development, but this game lands somehow just hollow, because it doesn't bring anything to the main character's story. It is just violent because of sake of being violent, with no proper explanation of background. But now let's move on from this game to something more serious, shall we? Okay, the last sentences was a bit sarcastic. As Postal games have quite a lot of releases until now, I will for the sake of this video talk about Postal in general. Postal will definitely, without any doubt, push many buttons. Trust me, with so much bad and foul humor and the things you will do in the game, you will be offended and you will offend everybody in the game. Postal is everything that hatred wanted to be. While hatred is just pure violence, this is violence mixed with some humor. Some can argue this is toilet humor with much offensive stuff, but hey, if you grew up in the early 2000s, this game shook up the industry quite a bit. I mean, in which game can you use a cat as a silencer? Running at scissors at its finest. The game revolves around a postal dude doing normal things in his life. For example, you pick up a paycheck, then the bank got attacked by a certain group. Then you need to pick up some meat. You go to the butcher shop and you discover they're using human meat. And so on and so on. But Postal is giving you options for the most part. To beat every mission, you don't really need to engage in action, but let's say sometimes there are another way around it. This game is everything that the mainstream games aren't allowed to do. Postal knows that and he embraces it. I did also a video about Postal on my channel if you want to hear me more talking about it. Somehow Postal has a special place in my heart, and it's a game I definitely will mention a few more times on my channel.
Warning, the video, warning, disturbing.
So, are you prepared as we dive into the depths of this iceberg? Because I'm not ready. So, I think the last part of the iceberg was somehow disturbing, but I was wrong. So wrong. We really hit bottom with this layer in every aspect. The sites I needed to visit to dig up some of the stuff on the games on the list were very questionable, let's say. But I did everything I could so you can have a good video. Next time I hope somebody gives me more hints about the game because researching some of the game with an English title was really a hit and miss sometimes. I'm going to warn you again, the layer will be more disturbing than the rest. So in fact that for some games I couldn't even find almost anything to show you because of the risk of getting a strike on YouTube. But I tried my best to explain every game and a specific deed in the game to really give you an idea of what the game is really about. In the end, I will rate this iceberg and talk about which layer was the best, so to say, for a horror fan, so please stay till the end. Now, I thank you for checking in and I hope you enjoyed the video. So, prepare yourself as we dive into the layer 5 of the dark, obscure and disturbing video game iceberg.
Access granted.
My computer was not happy when I started googling this. Let me tell you, because the sites I need to visit were very weird. And I'm regretting the things I saw also. So I think I'm supposed to talk about, yeah, that name you saw on the screen. Why am I showing just random clips until now? Because finding footage for this game is really hard. Even showing the pictures is strike worthy for YouTube. I will show you some pixelated images just to let your imagination play wild as I describe the game to you, okay? Ready? There was a little girl giving birth lying on a solid floor, without anyone to help her. Too powerless to resist, she was just treated as an ordinary tool. Only one duty was forced upon her, to be a seedbed. Being held in a dark room, she lost her family, her friends, and the normal everyday life she lived. And she was deprived of everything else she had. Now, if I continue doing things like this, I hope that NordVPN will sponsor me so I don't fry my PC for searching for this stuff. So, the game I think I should talk about is Starless Paradise. Because there is also a game called Starless and it's a sci-fi horror. But I guess I'm talking about the right game. Now this game is basically a hentai adaptation to a novel. I want to show you some images, but it will be hard because, again, YouTube. I'm going to roll a few pictures in circles so you get the idea of the game, okay? Now, the plot follows a guy who seeks a job and finds an odd job as a handyman. He goes to a beautiful and big mansion where he gets the job, but he is held captive with few more people to do bizarre tasks for sake of the amusement of the family. So I wanna stop here because this game is just flat and mediocre and I didn't find anything that convinced me otherwise. It is just like hatred to some extent. I know the characters have personality and everybody's different, but I can't use that as explanation why the game deserves to be on the list at all. To not waste any more of my breath and your time, let's move on. So I struggled to get much information on this game. If I'm not wrong, it's only Japanese and there isn't any English patch yet. But I found out that the cage has few parts. Today we will talk about the cage open part. The game has a manga feel to it and it looks more artistic than the previous two games on the list, definitely. But as many games on this layer, this gets hardcore. Our protagonist suddenly loses conscience on his way home from work. He wakes up surrounded by ruins and old buildings. He wakes up in an abandoned amusement park. An announcement suddenly informs that the game is about to begin. The rules are very simple. For 8 days, the participants will continue their normal lives during the daytime, but once the night falls, they will be forced into an old amusement park as they are fighting for a coin that will earn them 50 million yen. Sounds like Alice in Borderland or Squid Game, am I right? But then comes the scene around where apparently a 12-year-old forced himself on an adult somehow. So yeah, that's cage open. This is a game, a Japanese game. So everything I say, take it with a grain of salt because of the translations, okay? Mio Shirasaka, who had been deeply traumatized and depressed after being involved in a rape case, gradually regains her will to live after interacting with Yuka on the internet. She asks her family to relocate to the town where 𝙄𝙘𝙚𝙚𝙗𝙚 resides to seek further salvation and find meaning to life again. The family gladly and wholeheartedly supports the request, hoping for her full recovery. However, the family's fresh start, which was intended to be full optimistic, progressively crumbles as Mia starts to join the Fraternity Club, a devious off-campus group at Yuka's request. Meanwhile, Taichi develops feelings for her classmate, Megumi. Nonetheless, he soon discovers that Megumi is also a member of the bizarre club. The wounded girl on the request for salvation and Taichi, who seeks to help them, cross paths, leading to a new tragedy. The game has much empathy on how psychopaths can enjoy life in different ways. In this game they are also portrayed about partaking in, let's say, grown-up meetings, so to say, and where they do all shady and sick things imaginable what psychopaths can do. Written and played by Sakarubo Maruo as an official pseudo-sequel to his infamous game from 2014. A lot of readers were baffled by Dasuko's texture, its insistence on expressing idealistic, heart-on-sleeve portrait of empathy and love throughout the most disgusting, grotesque imaginary images at his disposal. Something like Dasuko can only exist as a freaky, weird and bizarre game like this. The main subjects are struggling with their identities in every form. The game has also some strong characters, which do crazy and despite sick acts just to show how they feel and how they see the world around them. Dasuko is a game that wants you to challenge, to ask questions and leave you without satisfying answer. It is all about identity crisis and struggling to find your place in the world. But when they started to poking holes into each other, I know that was the time to bail out. I don't know if I wanna continue this video at this point. Even if I try to explain it, I think I will be immediately banned for 3 lifetimes on YouTube. But again, I'm going to try to explain you at least somehow how the plot resolves and show you a few acts what were done in the game. Where the last layer was a perfect mix of dark and disturbing, this layer is getting a little bit out of hand. Formerly known as Kajuo City, I probably pronounced that wrong, but it was transformed overnight into a demonic city. When the immortal, undefined being called witches began to appear, the whole city was under quarantine. The whole city became a ghost town, and it was a perfect place for criminals, illegal immigrants who couldn't make a living in this corrupt world but seek refuges in that city, followed by a bunch of ladies of the nights, black market dealers and yakuza seeking to take advantages of them. The only way to kill a witch is to take off their heads, otherwise they can die, but can feel every bit of pain, and sometimes the people throw the witches into some tentacle monsters who are, how to describe it? Well, they are having intercourse with their veins of the witches, and they can die. So yeah, so I wanna ask you, the audience, what do you think is the plot of this visual novel? Go, give it a try, okay? Did you think of something? By the way, the game is also very vivid and rich written that could put real mangas at shame. But the developer who made the game says it's about Christianity and morals. There you have it. Dustmania is a guru hentai, and please don't google those 2 words together, I beg you. So Dustmania is about a mad scientist wanting to do experiment on pain with humans. He selected his ex-co-worker, a female scientist, from the job he was fired. He kidnapped her, injected her with sedatives, and when she finally woke up, she was of course terrified and tied up. The mad scientist give his madman speech about how he wants to evolve the human genome and she will be his guinea pig. The girl wasn't pleased at all, because who would be, but the man scientist didn't take it well, so he proceeds to... yeah, you get it. Now, for my research, I found that this game is pretty cheap made and it doesn't have a good story either. It has a much to do with operations and things related in the medical area, plus all the things you can imagine which a game such like this could include. Okay, this is probably the tamest game on the list we saw today. The game had some erotic parts, but it goes so far that the game is in English and it was released on the Switch, so that's something I guess. Of course, the Switch version is censored and it's a visual novel only. In the world of 𝙄𝙘𝙚𝙚𝙗𝙚𝙧𝙜, humans live with cat-cross, humanoid cats who can communicate and can behave as humans. I won't dive deep in this game because it's simply more a comedic romantic novel so far as I saw, and this game has anything to offer which could lead that this game is so deep on the iceberg, okay? So this game is like Squid Game. So 6 friends find themselves in a locked room. All of them were very confused about the abnormal situation. When a mysterious voice suddenly announced to them, the game will now begin. The game plays out that the boy, who is a sick, twisted freak, and of course none of the girls knew that, needs to do certain games so he can get to the next room. The boy chooses a girl, a keyhole, and that's how they addresses the participants in the game. He needs to produce stuff and things to open the door. The game is really infamous for a scene where the girl is eating chocolate fudge. I hope that's appropriate to say. And I hope it gives you a hint of what happened. And of course, it is written in such a vivid manner that the game is really trying to draw you in. Oh, 2 more games to go on this list and we are done. This game tries to mix horrors with deep questions. The game has 6 chapters that you need to play through. The game follows a bunch of protagonists who are trying to make sense of the weird world they're living in. The game is also a mystery novel, and I know it doesn't sound too bad after I'm describing the game like this, but the game is trying to slice a balance between humping and deep questions in life. Again, that doesn't seem too bad, but the game is really deep and some people swear on its writing and world building. But then again, it has a scene where a girl and a dog are going on a walk. Well, what's bad about that? I was lying about the part where they are going on a walk. Demon Phobia is a weird game to finish this hell of a ride we had. Well, Demon Phobia is a game where you play as a 14-year-old girl named Sakura, who awakes in a labyrinth in hell, and now she needs to escape to not die. For whichever reason, she's naked most of the time. And I don't know why and what that brings to the game, but okay. By the way, they also included over 60 death animations in the game. You must fight your way through 7 floors, each with a boss and monsters. The game has a pretty basic story, so to say. It is a game where the developer just wanted you to die and die again for no good reason. You're a helpless little girl trapped in a hell with vicious creatures. You are terrified and you don't know why this is happening. It's again a game where people are going insane and saying that this is the pinnacle of what the horror genre has to offer, where some say it's just pure crap. It's a try and error game where you need to die over and over again to see how the enemies behave so you can escape, because of course you can fight back. Is this a cheap game in that gameplay element or not? Decide for yourself. A great thing I need to admit is how they portrayed hell as a labyrinth instead of a lake of fire, because in this concept every character has his own demons to fight for the sins they have done in his life. That begs the question, did Sakura do something that she deserves to be in this place? I'm so glad we are done with this layer. I feel that this layer was a bit too much. I know that some people love extreme ways the visual novels can get and portray with their characters and how they paint the worlds with their imaginations they have, but I'm glad I'm done with this layer. Definitely the sweet point was the previous layer, so the first 2 layers were also okay, but the games were common known games that didn't spark my interest too much because they are covered so many times on the internet. internet, but the previous two layers had few gems, so to say, which I would like to check out. And I found that themes were just right. They had deep and disturbing games, but mostly followed with story and great characters. I'm not saying that layer 5 was from the quality much worse, but it get overboard with explicit themes. And I'm now ready to play some Breath of the Wild and relax. But before that, I have one more question. Which Iceberg video you want to hear me talk next? Or should I do a deep dive on the video games you saw on the list? I am thanking you so much for sticking until this part of the video, that means the world to me. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I see you in the next one. 𝙄𝙘𝙚𝙚𝙗𝙚 over and out.